Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Elliott of Coherent Breathing. It's July 5th, 2025. Today I'll be speaking to principle number 6. Principle number 6 shares a lot in common with principle number 5, which was last week's presentation, and principle number 7, which will be next week's presentation. There is a theme that runs through all three of them, this theme being really a cornerstone of coherent breathing and the new science of breath that has now been in the public domain for over 20 years. This being that per principle number 5, breathing is a circulatory function. This means that not only are the lungs involved in blood flow throughout the body, the lungs and the thoracic cavity surrounding the lungs and the diaphragm at the bottom of the thoracic cavity work to move blood in the body. Just as the heart moves blood in the body, if we stop breathing permanently, we will perish because eventually the cells in the body will not receive the replenishment of gases, fluids, nutrients, waste removal, etc., that they require. This is true of all eukaryotic cells in the human body. Now, we have named this wave the Valsalva Wave. We may have heard of that. That is the name of the coherence instrument, Valsalva Wave Pro. We chose that name, Dr. Bob Grove of J&J Engineering and I at the time. We chose that name for Antonio Valsalva and his initials. And the reason for that is that it is both arterial and venous. This being that the wave rises in the arterial tree during exhalation, and blood volume, the wave, in terms of blood volume, rises in the venous tree during inhalation. Hence, arterial venous, Antonio Valsalva, which you may know was a pioneer in the understanding of breathing, and especially breathing underwater, and how to clear one's ears when one is diving deeply down to the ocean floor, clearing one's eustachian tube via the famous Valsalva maneuver, something that has survived the time with his name attached. I hope coherent breathing does as well. But the reality that I want to leave everyone with, as I said in principle number 5, is that if you're going to remember one thing about coherent breathing, remember that it facilitates circulatory health in the body. It is contributing every time we inhale and exhale with depth and rhythmicity. It is contributing to the blood flowing in the body. It's not adding more blood. The average volume of blood in the adult human body is 5 liters. We have 42 liters of fluid in the average adult body, but only 5 of those liters are blood. It is the job of those 5 liters to circulate through the body to facilitate exchange at the pervasive capillary membrane, which you may know is roughly 25,000 miles long in the average adult body. This is a microscopic construct in the circulatory system that facilitates then fluid flow to and from the extracellular fluid, in which the cells of the body, estimated in the trillions, float, much like plants in an aquarium or in the ocean, float and receive nourishment from the water. And it is pressure variations in that water and flow variations that facilitate this exchange in terms of hydration, nutrition, waste removal, energy production, metabolic waste removal, etc., that keeps cells vital and alive. In the last principle, I talked about the milieu interior. This is the interior of the body and all of the cells that are floating in that interior, regardless of what type of cell it is. All eukaryotic cells function this way and are dependent on proper flow of blood and then associated extracellular fluids, cellular fluids, and bodily chemistry to keep them vital, alive, and able to produce energy. You may know that all eukaryotic cells function on the basis of electricity, in effect. And inside each eukaryotic cell, there is energy machinery that is converting hydrogen to ATP, and ATP later gets reconverted into energy that the cells of the body use. So it's a vitally important bodily function. We can't perform any work of significance without breathing more fully, deeply, rhythmically, because it amps up circulation in the body, which then amps up fluid exchange with all the cells of the body that are generating all of the energy that the body requires to perform whatever work is at hand. And this includes mental work. Last week, I mentioned that during exhalation, a large wave of blood leaves the lungs, goes out through the heart, left heart, and into both descending and ascending aortas. The function of the ascending aorta is to make sure the brain is receiving adequate blood flow. The primary baroreceptors that manage blood flow and pressure in the body are located at the bifurcation of the carotid arteries in the brain. And their job is to keep a very, very close eye on flow and pressure in the brain. This, for obvious purposes of maintaining a viable brain status when we rise from being a horizontal body position to being vertical. And gravity is now drawing blood downward in our vertical body. Whereas in a horizontal body position, gravity is normalized across the length of our body and blood flows more freely back and forth, which is a reason that sleep and being reclined in a horizontal body position is healthful to the circulatory system. It helps it revive and restore. It is also a key reason why brain health is dependent on sleep. You may have heard this before if you've studied or read about sleep and why 8 hours of sleep is the nominal requirement for human beings. This is to allow a period of time for blood flow to be normalized across the body when the body is not working. This blood flow washes through the brain with every breath. Some of the most amazing findings that we've run across in time during the 25 years of coherent breathing now is that practitioners, in particular, practitioners that employ biofeedback and EEG, they see immediately the effects that even a single breath can have on the EEG. A story I tell of the late, great Elsa Baer of Chicago, NeuroQuest of Chicago, is that she called me a few years after the introduction of coherent breathing, and we had met at ISNR and AAPB seminars, and she said, "Steve, I have to tell you about something that I'm seeing in the EEG with my clientele." And I said, "Please do. I'm all ears." And she said, "What we're seeing is during the first deep inhalation and exhalation that a client takes during a clinical experience, we see alpha wave amplitude jump up in the brain immediately with the first inhalation and exhalation of the coherent breathing practice, where the primary vocal instructive sequence is the recommended primary beginning point for clinicians to use with their clients." And Elsa was using that recording. And she said when her client inhaled and then exhaled deeply the first time, inhaled and then exhaled deeply the first time, that immediately alpha amplitude jumped up much higher than normal. And she asked me, she said, how and why can this happen? And she knew that I was onto the Valsalva Wave science at the time, and we were working down that path. And I said, "Well, Elsa, it has to be due to the Valsalva Wave washing through the brain with every breath, including the first breath we take." And that is the tale of coherent breathing that I will leave you with for principle number 6 today. We'll talk more about it next week with principle number 7. Stay tuned, and thank you very much for your interest. Good day.